So far in the course, we've looked at placing a number of different types of component families. We've looked at placing doors, windows, and structural and architectural columns. Now, for each of those, they have their own specific tools, as we've looked at, but there's a whole variety of components which don't have a specific tool dedicated to them. So, for example, furniture. We can place furniture objects or families into our model, but we don't have a distinct and separate furniture button in which to do that. So for all those categories of objects or elements that don't have a specific tool, we have a general component button in which to place them, and we can also from there load additional ones into our project. So that's what we're going to take a look at in this unit. So if I hit the little click down next to component, we see we've got two options: place a component and model in place. Now I will stress that this is the full version of Revit that I'm using here, and the full version of Revit has both those options: place a component and model in place. If you're using Revit LT, you will only have the place a component option available to you. Model in place is a function that only comes with the full version of Revit. So let's go ahead and place a component. So select that option there. Now in your type selector will be a list of component families that are currently loaded into your project, and what appears in that list will be determined by what was in the template file that this project or the project that you're opening is based on. So you can see here I've got some furniture, I've got some rainwater pipes, some planting, and to place a component it's as simple as clicking the family and type that you want and just hovering over your model, and with each click of the mouse it places an instance of that particular family into the model. So let's go down, put some trees in, take a look at that in 3D. Now some of the components that you use will be what's called RPC, rich photographic content, and that means basically they have a realistic image embedded into the family itself, but that only appears when you render them, or for example with a full version of Revit where you've got more visual styles, you can switch to a realistic visual style and you will actually get the photographic content displayed instead. So I'm just going to switch back to shaded, and you can see there we have the basic geometry outline displayed instead now. So what if we need to bring additional component families into our project? We can do that easily by selecting place a component again, and at the end of the ribbon you will see the load family button. Select that. Again, you should see the default installation library that was set up when you installed Revit, and here you have all the generic components supplied by Autodesk. So let's just go and have a look at some items in here. Specialty equipment, ladders, different ladders here. Now notice some of these components, I'm just picking ladders as an example, some of these components will be hosted components. For example, that one there needs a wall to host onto. Some are freestanding. Exercise equipment, let's put a treadmill in, hit open, it becomes the currently selected family in the properties palette, and now again I can just click to place. Notice before I actually click to place it, if I tap the space bar I can actually rotate the object around 90 degrees for each tap. Quite useful for getting the orientation correct, saves you having to rotate it after you've put it in. If you do want to rotate it after, on the options bar you do have an option there, put the little tick in the tick box, rotate after placement, and now you can fine-tune its orientation. Earlier in the unit I explained that it was only the full version of Revit that had the two options here under the component command, the place a component and the model in place. If you're running Revit LT, you will only have place a component and not model in place. I just want to finish off this unit by explaining what this model in place tool does. The detailed use of it is outside the scope of the beginner's course, but I think it's useful just to explain what this tool is typically used for. So, model in place, this is when we want to create a bespoke component or element in this specific project. So it's typically used for unique one-off items. It could be a bespoke reception desk. It could even be a wall which is bespoke to this particular project. Now, the limitation of this tool is that anything you create using it only exists within this project. You cannot get that component as a family out of the project to reuse it in future projects. So if, for example, you created a nice fancy reception desk in this project using that tool and then decided to use it on a future project, you wouldn't be able to actually get the component out of this project to be able to reuse it. You'd be much better creating it with the family editor as a standalone RFA Revit family file that you can reuse over and over. So this tool really should be limited to one-off bespoke items which you're not going to reuse in future projects. So I've hit model in place. First of all, I have to choose a category for the item. So I'm going to pick, just for this example, generic models, which is just a catch-all category. Give it a name. I'm going to leave it as a default there. And now the ribbon changes completely to show us a series of modeling tools. I'm going to form a simple extrusion. I'm just going to sketch the shape I want there. I'll put a closed loop in it. It's OK. Green tick again to finish the model. And there is a piece of geometry, a generic model that I can now adapt. So the way I've used it just now is a little bit like you would typically do in SketchUp. So you could create some site context using that tool. But again, I will reiterate, I can't take that element now and save it as a separate standalone file outside of this project. It has to remain in here.
And that completes this unit. To get the most out of this training material, please take the complete course online at bimscape.com. Here you will find a complete learning management system that allows you to work through the course at your own pace. Comprehensive written tutorials provide additional information to that found in the training videos. Mark each unit as complete as you finish it and move on to the next. At any point you can return to any of the units you have previously completed to go over the material again. If you'd like to take this course online, please visit www.bimscape.com/Revit for details.